Hey everyone! Welcome to The Young and the Restless. I'm Jane, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love Young and the Restless, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Alright, let's dive right in. Spoilers for The Young and the Restless suggest that Holden Novak's evil scheme might be in the works. Is it possible that Holden will become the menace that Cain Ashby is unaware of? It appears that a lot of the hostility that existed between Holden and Damian Cain before the latter's journey to Nice was merely for show. To hide the fact that he was still working for Aristotle Dumas, also known as Cain, Holden had to pretend that he was tired of being fired. Fans of YNR are aware that Holden and Damian's friendship wasn't always ideal. Even though Damian struggled with anger management and occasionally changed while he was controlling Holden, they still maintained affection for one another. You can bet that Holden will be devastated by the news of his death because he and Damian used to be as close as brothers. Holden should be incensed that Damian was stabbed on Cain's property by his insane employee. In fact, since he will never have the opportunity to make up with Damian now that he is gone, it might make Holden want for retribution. Cain might be the next best thing for Holden, who will be searching for someone to blame because Carter is dead. Will Holden's desire for vengeance be exploited by Chelsea Lawson and Adam Newman? It's simple to see Chelsea and Adam enlisting Holden in the Newman scheme to harm Cain. If Victor Newman believes Holden is trustworthy, he might fully support the scheme. Since Holden is still working with Cain and has assisted with all of his real estate acquisitions, he may be in a good position to assist with his takedown. Holden may covertly plot his boss's demise as long as he can convince Cain that he is loyal. Do you believe that Holden will eventually set Cain up for a trap? Will Holden join Team Newman and turn against Cain because of Damian's gory ending? Stay in for updates on whether Holden will be one of the key challenges that Cain faces in the future, according to spoilers for The Young and the Restless. Holden had always been a silent observer, the kind of man who glided in and out of conversations without anybody noticing, who collected secrets like trinkets and kept them in reserve for when the time was right to use them. He never displayed his cards too soon or made big threats. That was why, as of yet, no one in Genoa City was really afraid of him. As he sipped his scotch beside the Grand Phoenix suite window, he watched the city lights flicker like little fuses just waiting to be lit, yet behind those cool, calculating eyes was a storm that had been building for years. The objective was Cain Ashby. Not because Holden initially detested him. However, Cain stood in the way. Because Cain was excavating too near the one secret that Holden had buried deep, a secret that would destroy all Holden had worked so hard to create if it were revealed. Furthermore, Cain, who was conceited and impetuous, was unable to resist a problem. He was never sure when to leave. He was dangerous because of that. He was flawless because of that. Cain was unaware that Holden had been planning his demise for a long time before anyone recognized that a game was being played. It began with murmurs, whispers, and subliminal clues that perhaps Cain wasn't as innocent as he seemed. That perhaps his return to Genoa City was motivated more by retaliation than by atonement. Perhaps he still harbored resentment for the Winters family, particularly now that Lily's passing is looming over every space. Holden cut at Cain's psyche with that grief like a scalpel. The loneliness, the bewilderment, the guilt, all of it was helpful. The plot started to take shape when Amanda started to wonder why Cain was always missing at night and making odd calls, and when Carter vanished out of thin air following a heated argument with Cain. Holden simply observed everything as it happened. Like a puppeteer stringing up marionettes, he worked without a single hand. Cain was completely unprepared for the depth of Holden's trap. This went beyond simply making fun of him in public or accusing him of a minor offense. No, the goal was to erase him. Holden had already started to modify surveillance footage, plant falsified emails, and even pay a low-level GCPD tech to monitor ongoing investigations. There would be a quick plunge into pandemonium with no warning indications for Cain. Friends would become aloof. Alliances would break up. People would murmur his name in disdain and horror. Holden would be waiting, grinning, and observing throughout it all. The only thing Kane did wrong was to underestimate Holden's willingness to go. See, Holden had discovered long ago that gradual retaliation was the only way to feel satisfied. He didn't want to simply destroy Kane. He wanted to see him struggle, to see him retaliate, to believe, if only briefly, that he could prevail. That greatly enhanced the enjoyment of the crash. As usual, Kane had already fallen for the ruse. He was becoming suspicious. Regarding the missing money from Hamilton Winters, he confronted Devon and demanded answers that no one could provide. Persuaded that there was something strange about Holden's abrupt climb to prominence, he began to follow him around. The clever thing about Holden's trap, though, was that there was always a false lead or a decoy even when Kane approached. The disappearance of Carter? A herring in red. Amanda discovered a flash disk in her office. An arrangement. The texts Lily had received before she died, anonymously? Holden threw a burner into the lake a few weeks prior. Kane pulled one thread after another, creating a knot. And he began to unravel slowly and frustratingly. However, the last act was still to come. Holden was keeping that for himself. Eventually, he knew, Kane would corner him, accuse him, and possibly even threaten him. Holden, however, was 10 steps ahead. Everything would fall apart the night Kane would lose it. Kane would be placed in handcuffs after a prearranged scuffle, a well-timed police call, and a concealed camera. Aggressive. Unstable. A danger to the neighborhood. What about the proof? Unbreakable. Holden had taken care of it on his own. However, there was more. More at all times. Days before the man's enigmatic arrival, Holden had heard about Kane and Damian's covert encounter. He had pictures. Sound. Another rope Holden would pull when the moment was ripe was a manipulated video that gave the impression that Kane was blackmailing Damian. Because Kane was gravely mistaken if he believed that the law was his greatest issue. The true threat was inside. From those he believed he could rely on. Nick. Devon. Sharon, too. Holden had secretly revealed information Kane believed to be long buried, raised doubts, and poisoned the well. He informed Devon about Kane's impending agreement with a competing tech firm. He gave Sharon an indication that while the Dumas inquiry was underway, Kane had been monitoring her internet activities. Tiny things that are planted just deeply enough to sprout and mentioned at the appropriate moment. Kane sensed it, too. The icy looks. The abrupt quiets. The way he raised his voice and Amanda winced. Billy's sly smile as he walked into a room. Everything was a part of the show. Holden enjoyed every moment of it. But despite his composed demeanor, Holden was not immune to the game's excitement. In a sense, he respected Kane. He was a man with a backbone. He had trouble folding. However, that simply added to the allure of the trap. Since Holden was aware of the outcome, Kane would be left vulnerable, surrounded, and alone at the end. And he would be thrown out like poison by the city that had once welcomed him back. Holden had even written the last act, which included a fabricated story that put him at the scene of Lily's last moments, an anonymous tip to the media, and a controversy that connected Kane to Damian's comeback. Kane's name would be associated with treachery by the time the truth was revealed, if it ever was. Holden would also be impenetrable. Despite his self-assurance, Holden was not an expert. He was unaware of the envelope Amanda had stashed away, the one she had not yet ventured to open, and the one Carter had left behind with the scrawled words, "Kane is the only one who can stop him if anything happens to me." He was also unaware that Phyllis had started her own covert inquiry since she was dubious of Holden's charisma. Or that Damian was still alive and gradually getting better in a cabin outside of Genoa City, nourished and shielded by a former ally who owed Cain a favor. Damian had disappeared following a staged automobile accident. Not just for Cain, the storm was on its way. Holden's trap was nearly flawless. But he was so conceited that he thought everyone else would do their share. He didn't think that people who are in agony are erratic. Instincts are sharpened by that grief. That love, true love, takes time to fade. Cornered and bruised, Cain was starting to show signs of weakness. Even though he was missing some components, he sensed a sinister presence rising. He didn't think Holden's voicemails were reliable. Didn't think Amanda's apology flowers were genuine. Didn't believe that each lead terminated in silence by accident. He was secretly aware that he was being set up. He simply had no idea why. Not quite yet. However, he would. And the conflict would start when he did. Even though Holden was the puppet master, he failed to remember that Cain wasn't a puppet. He survived. And survivors become dangerous if they are pushed too far. More perilous than Holden could have ever imagined. Holden's sinister trap is brewing beneath the surface, a carefully constructed web of deception and manipulation that threat Cain remains oblivious to, his confidence blinding him to the danger lurking just out of sight. The tension between them has been simmering for months, a slow-burning fuse that Holden has meticulously nurtured, feeding it with calculated provocations and veiled threats disguised as casual remarks. Threat Cain, ever the brash and impulsive figure, has dismissed Holden as nothing more than a minor nuisance, a shadow in the periphery of his dominance, but that underestimation is precisely what Holden has been counting on. While Threat Cain postures and boasts, flexing his influence in the open, Holden has been working in the shadows, weaving a trap so intricate that by the time Threat Cain realizes he's caught, it will already be too late. The first threads of the snare were laid subtly, whispers in the right ears, carefully planted doubts, alliances forged in secret. Holden knows that brute force won't topple someone like Threat Cain. Instead, he's playing a far more dangerous game, one where perception is the real weapon. Every move Holden makes is deliberate, each action designed to appear insignificant on its own but forming part of a larger, inescapable net. He's studied Threat Cain's weaknesses, not the obvious ones that others see, but the deeper, more insidious flaws, his pride, his need for control, his inability to trust even those closest to him. These are the cracks Holden is exploiting, widening them with every passing day until the foundation of Threat Cain's power begins to crumble. The brewing storm isn't just about physical confrontation, it's a psychological siege, a war of attrition where Holden chips away at Threat Cain's invincibility, making him question his own allies, his own judgment. There have been signs, small but telling, a trusted lieutenant suddenly acting distant, a deal falling through at the last moment, rumors that can't quite be traced back to their source. Threat Cain might brush them off as coincidences, but Holden knows better. He's orchestrated each one, ensuring that the noose tightens imperceptibly, so slowly that Threat Cain won't feel it until it's already around his neck. The real brilliance of Holden's plan lies in its patience. He's willing to wait, to let Threat Cain's own paranoia do half the work for him. By the time the final pieces fall into place, Threat Cain will have already begun unraveling on his own, his once unshakable confidence eroded by doubt and suspicion. And then there's the wild card, the element Holden has kept hidden even from his own inner circle. There's a secret, a piece of leverage so damning that its revelation could shatter Threat Cain's reputation in an instant. Holden has been holding on to it, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, when Threat Cain is already off balance, already questioning everything. The timing has to be flawless. Too soon, and Threat Cain might rally his forces; too late, and the opportunity could slip away. But Holden has always been a master of precision, of striking when the iron is hottest. When the trap finally springs, it won't be with a dramatic confrontation or a bloody battle, it will be with a single, devastating revelation, delivered at the exact moment when Threat Cain is most vulnerable. The fallout will be swift and merciless, leaving Threat Kane scrambling to contain a crisis of his own making, his empire collapsing from within as former allies turn against him, realizing too late that they've been backing the wrong horse all along. Yet, for all his meticulous planning, Holden knows that no scheme is foolproof. Threat Kane is no fool, despite his arrogance, and if he catches even a whiff of Holden's true intentions, the entire plan could backfire spectacularly. There's always the risk of betrayal, of someone within Holden's circle cracking under pressure or selling him out for a better offer. And then there's the unpredictable nature of power itself, shifting loyalties, unforeseen obstacles, the sheer chaos of human ambition. Holden has accounted for as much as he can, but some variables remain beyond his control. Still, he's willing to gamble everything on this play, because the alternative, letting Threat Kane continue unchecked, is far worse. The stakes are impossibly high, but Holden has never been one to shy away from danger. As the final stages of his trap fall into place, Holden watches from the shadows, a silent predator waiting for his moment. Threat Kane, for all his bluster, remains oblivious, still convinced of his own invincibility. But soon, very soon, that illusion will shatter, and when it does, Holden will be there to pick up the pieces. The question isn't whether the trap will spring, it's whether Threat Kane will even see it coming before it's too late. And by then, the game will already be over.